Financial wellness. Reach out to them for advice at 855-DON-GINO. And now back to your hosts, Don Getling and Gino Fronti.
And the ad says, what if I were to die prematurely? What if I became disabled prematurely? And what happens if I need assistance for home health care nursing home prematurely? Like, nobody thinks we all think we're going to live forever, but we all know people that haven't. And things happen. Just things happen in life. So what if, and I think everybody should just really protect themselves just in the event. And it's not really protecting themselves, but protecting their family, their loved ones.
And isn't that really the fear of death that we have? Is not really so much. Most of us, I'll speak for myself, but I'm not afraid of dying myself. I'm really afraid of what's going to happen to my kids, what's going to happen to my wife, what's going to happen to my house, what's going to happen to my family, my work family, because yes, although we're all replaceable, it doesn't mean it doesn't create a big void in other people's lives. So I know the void that I've felt in my life when others have left us prematurely, and I think that's the fear of death that we have, and even worse than death, like you said, being prematurely disabled can be even more of a weight on somebody's family.
Besides yourself and your family, it's terrible, yes. And the long-term care, it's, most people, again, think it's never going to happen to them. But statistically, 1 out of 2, it's going to happen to 1 out of 2 people over the age of 65 for an extended period of time. And the cost is expensive.
1 out of 2.
It's actually 40%. I'm rounding it up.
Wow. Okay, so let me tell you guys something, an example here. And I know that just because of the what-if scenario, let's go ahead and talk about this. So a friend of mine that I've known probably for 25 years or so, I get a call from my dad that says, hey, he's been in a motorcycle accident. Okay. And I know personally that he's self-employed. He's only got 1 or 2 employees, and his entire income and lifestyle and everything revolves around him going to work and doing what he does on a day-to-day basis. And, first I was like, is he okay? Is he going to be all right? Is he going to make it? Because it was a pretty bad accident. He had lacerated pancreas, broken bones, ended up having kidney was sewn back together. I mean, it's a serious accident. And when I found out he was going to be okay and he was out of the coma and all these other things, the next thing I thought to myself is, he's not going to be able to work for 2 or 3 months, at least while he recovers from this traumatic incident. And so what happens during something like that? So let's talk about something like that, because that's something very real, right? That's something that could happen to any of us when we walk out the door tomorrow morning with our kids and get on our bike, and we could fall off while riding on a paseo or something.
That's a good question, actually. What happens in this state is, if you have state disability, it kicks in after 7 days, but it's a short term. When you purchase a regular long-term disability policy on your own or through your company, it's usually a 90-day wait. So typically, you're not being paid for 90 days. After the 90th day, the payment starts kicking in.
Okay, so let me get that straight. So the state-run disability is 7 days for short term,
right?
Which most of us should be able to make it 7 days, hopefully.
Right.
And then what? Then you get what?
It's minimal. It's minimal. The max, don't quote me on it, but the max is like $2,200 a month.
Okay, and of course that's a certain percentage of your income. Usually, what, 60%, I think.
Well, that's the highest the payment's going to be for state disability, roughly $2,200 a month.
Okay, for most of us, that's
gone
not
up
enough.
A little bit. Yeah.
In California, for most of us, that's not enough to pay for our housing expense.
Right, exactly.
So for short-term disability, what can I get? Supplemental, something that covers the difference between that?
Supplemental disability, absolutely. And there's a lot of employers offer supplemental. It may be a voluntary plan that you're paying for it on your own. There's also other plans you mentioned for accidents and things like that. There's a lot of companies that do that, like Aflac and things like that. Well, like your friend, he could have had a lump sum payment, or if somebody's injured, they give you a lump sum if something like that were to happen to help you get by.
Like I said, Scott, and this is Scott Zimmerman with Corporate Strategies, a member of America's Professional Resource Group, helping me co-host the show today. I love bagging on myself, right? That makes life easy for everybody, and hopefully a little more entertaining for you out there. The reality is, I know I have some sort of work plan, but quite honestly, I filled it out in the middle of a busy day, and it was the last day to fill it out, and I said, fill out these forms, otherwise you get nothing, and I don't really kind of remember what I did, so I'm sure that I'm not the only one like that. So what should we do? Should we ask our HR department what we got and show it to you, or?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes, chances are, if it's you work with a really good company, chances are it's 60 for your disability insurance benefit. It's 60%,
Okay.
up to either 6,000 or 10,000. That's very typical. So that's what it would be. But you can always call your HR. They'll give you can look at the policy and see what it is.
Okay, so if you could see what we've been doing with Dawn over the last few years with our America's Professional Resource Group is we've been talking about changing our lives and living it and breathing it and doing it. As hard as it is, we share with you how hard it is because that's how hard it's going to be for you. It's not, building a trust was not easy. I mean, there was things my wife and I had to discuss about how we want our children to be raised. There was discussions about we want this or we want that, or how do we spend money, or do we put away money for college? Do they get all their money up front? Do they not get their money? Can they sell the properties we own? I mean, there was a lot to that.
How you want to be buried?
And it's funny that you say that because I have really weird specific burial instructions, and that you're right. Those are things that I had never thought about before, but we had to think about that. So then that got done. So then it was like, okay. So then the next evolution of that was, I now know I'm underfunded in my life insurance department, even though I had something. Let's talk about the new age idea of how to take on life insurance and how much we need, Scott.
There's two ways to look at it. People will look at it two ways. One is I want to pay off my debts, have my debts paid off if something happens to me.
And a little something left over?
A little something left over. There's the other way I think it makes the most sense. If you're married, or if you have children, is replace your income. If something happened to you, you're gone, you're the breadwinner, for instance, something happened to you, $1 million nowadays is nothing, right? So if you pass away and you had $1 million, you invested it and you were able to get 5%, that'd be $50,000 a year. That's all $1 million is going to do. To keep and be able to keep that $1 million. There's college, if you have children, there's college to pay for, and there's so many expenses, so you really want to plan it out so that your income, or if you're gone, it's your children are taken care of and your spouse are taken care of. And you can leave them the way you want them to be left. So the peace of mind, if something happens to you, they're being taken care of. And
that's exactly what we're doing for myself and for my wife right now is we're reevaluating, reassessing, getting it for my wife because I didn't have anything for her. So if something happened to her, it'd be catastrophic to me. And we were able to evaluate my old policy. So here's the lesson for you is if you have a policy in place, you could be overpaying. I'm not going to say you are, but you could be overpaying. So I had Scott take a look at mine. I only had 11 years left on mine, and now I can go to minimally more. I could have 3 times as much coverage for a very, very small, insignificant amount more, and for many more years. So definitely, not only do you reevaluate your beneficiaries, but it's also great to reevaluate the plan you were on because life changes.
Absolutely. And got to protect yourself or your family for the what-ifs in life.
Yeah.
You never know.
Well, when we come back, we'll talk about some more what-ifs. We're going to have a guest from the Reap Rickett Law Firm talking about something that's heavily controversial. It does happen in our lives. It's called domestic violence. It's unfortunate, but it is a reality in our society, and we'll get into that with Matthew Brennan of the Reap Rickett Law Firm when we come back to the Don and Gino Real Estate and Finance Show.